also thanks to all the previous presenters, because it really sets the stage for this conversation of using data, extracting insights, and then eventually doing machine learning and AI. Because without the foundational things that Steve and Shiva and Rosa were talking about, I feel like there's not enough time in the day to focus on anything that might be added value for our citizens, our residents, our customers. And so that's why, like, I like to get that stuff sort of done, foundationally done. And I advise all customers to look at the security, make sure it's secure. Taking a little bit of a different angle of security is also the concepts of using data to inform our decision making. There's security aspect to this as well, because so I've been working for Microsoft in this capacity for 10 years now. Prior to that, I worked in government here in Washington State. And so I can remember, as maybe hopefully y'all are living through, like the knocks on my door and say, hey, Michael, I really need to know how many X we've done for citizens in zip code Y, right? It's something that they'll get knocked, either in a legislation meeting or some sort of an executive briefing. They need to have information. We all do. We all need this information so that we can make better decisions. How we go about it, at least in the past, and hopefully, more and more automated, is that we don't have to rely on Excel spreadsheets. Although it's still the number one BI tool in the world, we should have more strategic ways and more innovative ways to deal with this. Again, getting us out of the chores of extracting data, making it ready, preparing it on an ad hoc basis, and just having systems available at all times so that we can report and all this. So I'll just, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. I'll press this button here and yeah. There we go. So it's about making the data available as a strategic asset in what I just described about the data that, again, we've secured thanks to all the teams that have talked about or prior to my speech or my talk here, is that now that we've got it all secure and all this, like in parallel, we should start thinking about looking at it as a strategic asset. So what do I mean by this is that you probably got a little fatigue from the next data set I'm about to show you, but it's a very good example of bringing together a bunch of different data into one place. Now, it's just one example of this, in this case in Washington State, bringing together data from a variety of different data sets in the Department of Health, Human Services, like PPE, that's the protective equipment, hospital beds. As you might imagine, there's a bunch of different systems that are feeding into something like this, a dashboard or a report like this. And so, of course, this took time, but at the same time, when we helped them build this, we also set it up so that, there could be multiple use of that combined data, this new integrated, unified data set. What do I mean by that? So, yes, we are able to produce this foundational reporting and dashboard looks for, the public, for the citizens, for the residents to view on a website, as well as media outlets and so on. But also this same data set is now being used by the epidemiologists, by the analysts, by the data scientists to start to derive some sort of a pattern out of it, whether that be for predictive reasons or seasonality or spikes. The point is that we didn't have to do this multiple times for those different benefits. It was do it once, bring the data together once, and then make it available for multiple downstream effect, again, reporting and so on. So the reality of how to do that, though, is it varies from organization to organization. And I'm sure your organization is probably in a really good shape and not as challenged as, say, others are with this, the reality of this. But again, it's an idea or the concept of even understanding what data you have, determining whether it's trustworthy. That's trustworthy from the security aspect, as well as statistically speaking, right? Can it be used in a clean, quality manner, right? It does us no good if we've got the counts tripled on a case of topics. So that trustworthy thing spans multiple topics. And then, is it accessible, right? It's great if a data scientist has access to the data to be able to derive some sort of a pattern, but can we democratize that and make it more available to multiple audiences so that faster decision making can be achieved? And at the same time, can we leverage FedRAMP, IRS 1075, CGIS type compliance frameworks and services that fit those frameworks to make sure my compliance exposure is within the tolerance. So look, the reality of that, could hopefully, 1 second here.
Sorry about that. Can you hear me?
Yes, all good.
Okay, thank you. So the concept expands if you dive deeper into government data sets, right? The idea of understanding that data that is the public trust of that data, right? It's one thing to have like a Fortune 500 or private sector, which there might be some of you on the call, right, who have the data that's being used internally. It's another when we're kind of stewards of that data for public use. So the public wants to make sure that we're using that data ethically, responsibly as well, and that it's current and being used. Especially if we're starting to use it to inform our decision making, right? Is the right quality of data there, and is it altered? So again, you want to make sure that you're taking care of that from the secure side of the things, but also using the patterns, the proper modern techniques to engage or to ensure that these questions are being answered. And so the challenges, the barriers to being able to do that are pretty vast. I'm sure most of you already know this when we're talking about the data that is, for any one topic, any one industry, whether it be health and human services, whether it be justice and public safety, about case management, or whether it be about transit, whether it be about anything that us as government agencies have to cover, right? It's very frequently done in data silos. And so different elected officials manage and maintain and are responsible for different data types, although it might be about the same person or issue, it's probably in a silo, right? And so in addition to that data that's siloed probably is not congruent, like saying having a key that matches up that same citizen or that same customer, looking at that from different data sets. It's probably not, well, it's not always congruent. And then of course the complexity, the performance, the cost of trying to do that it's what's stopped us from doing this in the past. Let's be candid. Like, in my years in government, there's been many times where we bring in a new system, we try to figure out, okay, how are we securing the system? How are we making sure it performs? But very rarely when we say, how are we going to extract insights out of this system? Very rarely do those initiatives go beyond that. It's usually just, okay, well, do we have canned reports? Can we write enough reports? Can we run enough queries against this data? That's good enough. So it's not really, in the past, it's never been looked at from a very holistic view of bringing the data together. And that's changing, right? Especially with the cloud, is that this type of capability of creating a foundational enterprise-grade secure data, good quality data, it's starting to become democratized. I feel like it's the best time for doing this in government because we are no longer required to purchase, zillion-dollar systems just to get started and not know whether or not we have the right reports or everything else. We just build enough. We build enough foundation very inexpensively and via, consumption-based services that it shows us we can do something end-to-end from a foundation to then the scorecard to then performing analytics and potentially opening up some machine learning and AI capabilities that very easily I'm finding left and right. It's happening over and over again that legislators, mayors, council, folks that are decision makers and funding of these opportunities turn around and say, why haven't we been doing this before? It's tough to turn back around to them and say, well, I asked for it. I asked for $500,000 in this last legislative session, and you denied it. But it's so much, we never want to say I told you so, right? But it's more of a, if we can do this in a very small pilot proof of concept, it's so much easier to show them, what can be done, and then justify those expenditures to go with it, and just basically ramp that up. I mean, the other part of the cloud is that we can do this end-to-end type thing in a very small scale, but yet when it comes time to making that go to a production level, it's literally a matter of moving slider bars in many cases to turn it up to that capability. And so that's the journey of where it is now. I will dive into the capabilities, the things that you want to keep in mind, or how to instrument that in the capability side of it. But I want to go into the culture just a little bit more because it's the why. It's the reasons why I'm seeing so many more conversations around this happening at the executive level and really enabling us as IT folk to deliver on that. It's kind of a dream these days, but it has to do with developing that data culture. Some organizations start with it. Let's say it's a newly elected mayor who's got a data-driven initiative on that platform that says we're going to use data to make the right decisions for our communities. And other times it's more organic. It's more grassroots. It says, okay, well, let's start with something small, and then kind of grow into what could be a good data culture. And that's what happened in the county I'll mention here. A county that spans the metropolitan, the suburban, and then the rural side of things, where the issue of the last 10 years has been around homelessness. And so this homelessness issue is one that spans the health and human services side, as well as the public safety and justice side of things. And so it's such a huge issue to try to figure out. So it was the one, again, one of the examples that I'll bring up that says start small, dream big, but start small and build something end to end. In their case, it was bringing in homelessness information data that, of course, from the federal, state, and county and city level, there's systems for this. In fact, it's federally mandated that everyone has an HMIS. But what they weren't having is, mashing up that data with other data. What I mean by that is that an HMIS system maintains, shelter information, like point of time, who is homeless. It doesn't necessarily factor in how they became homeless, what conditions turned them homeless, and then what conditions help them find permanent housing and out of the cycle of homelessness and jail and so on. And they realized quickly at this county that they didn't just need the HMIS data, they needed to look at other data. And so what we turned to was behavioral health data. So this is information like adult, drug abuse, foster care, other behavioral health topics, including another data set within there was Medicaid, like looking at all the claims data and understanding it from not just the services being rendered, but also the cost of those services. Right. So those are the next three services, or the first three that got put into the system. All the while, they're loading the data in, they're starting to get the reports, better access to the data, but they started to have a pattern of iterating on that data set, making it more available and start extracting more insight out of it. Additionally, they realized that their county, provided a customer service, and in this case, they also have purview over the transit system. So they're able to look at the transit data because they didn't just see the transit as a service that runs folks from point A to point B, but they look at it as more like a community service, right? If John can get to work on time, does he get docked pay, right? And because he gets docked pay, does he miss out on the bill for utilities? And if because he misses utilities, suddenly, on and on, he's homeless. Or getting to daycare on time so that, fees for late pickup or everything else. Just basically looking at the transit system, the responsibility of the county to provide that transit system and service and the rider notifications within it was absolutely within the purview of what happened, of keeping the community safe. And then, of course, in the middle of it all, a pandemic occurs. And so the point I bring up with this use case is that they started small, they started iterating on that data, they continued to bring in more data, and eventually they had a system very quickly, actually, that allowed them to make the right decisions, to make decisions that count. What I mean by that is now epidemiologists and caseworkers and leadership executives, they all have what they need out of it, whether it be a government, executive dashboard of that, or a caseworker gets informed of information within the system, or epidemiologists can run models against the data and look for trends. That's what I'm talking about is being able to bring that all together so that all aspects within the government could be benefit or take benefit from a system like this. I say system, but it's really, again, that culture. It's not necessarily like a turnkey solution where you buy a box and it all happens. It's more of taking steps, iterative steps where you can, where it's possible. It might mean a report, a quick report, Power BI, Tableau. It really doesn't matter. Just starting to use that data. Accessing that data, and then while identifying what's important, bringing that data into a system that could be to capabilities that can be iterated on, so that we can deliver better services, make better decisions, and improve operational efficiencies. I won't read all that out to you, but this is eventually where we want to get to. I'll dive into the capabilities now about how to make this happen, and name some of the services that are available out there. that make it happen. And, you know, I'll say that there's sort of, again, from the security, the foundational pieces, there's capabilities within the cloud that will get you out of the chore business, the chores of, you know, that day-to-day work. If you can offload those chores, say a SQL database, right? Making sure that it's optimized, up and running, available, right? Those are the things that are on the left side here of data modernization and cloud native applications. I'd say once you get to that point where you're future-proofing that platform and making sure that it's performant and all that, that you can turn your focus to the things that I'm talking about, which I'm seeing more and more folks, more and more organizations start to embrace and build on, and, you know, start somewhere, and eventually opening up these data science and data governance concepts. So conceptually speaking, you might be asking about the pattern. I know Shiva shared some architecture diagrams. Mine are a little more abstract, okay? Because every application, every system has some sort of a data backend, right? Whether that be something that's on-prem, whether it be something in the cloud, you know, whether it be some sort of SaaS system. There's this bulk of data that needs to be understood. And so how we've traditionally done that is, you know, taking an Excel spreadsheet or a Power BI report or something like that to turn that into some sort of a thing out of that data backend available for our government customers, right? So it could be an assessor's office. It could be, you know, for tax purposes. It could be, again, transit and courts, right? But it's always traditionally cost in terms of time, accuracy, and money, right, to make that all happen individually. So the pattern that I'm talking about, that I've been describing, this culture, is really just made up of a couple different services. And services, and it's an approach that's been opened up by the Fortune 500s and everyone prior to us in government, right? So it's not so much as bleeding edge anymore as it is like refined for us as government to embrace and leverage. And what I mean by that is that the stuff that used to take time and was costly was trying to understand what needed to be done. What kind of report did they have to have? Did people need to have? What kind of questions did they want to ask? And that would inform what we could ingest or extract out of the system. Well, because of the technology and the cloud and how inexpensive it is to do this now, it means that we don't necessarily even have to know the questions before we start grabbing the answers. So I always describe it as an extraction or an ingestion of all the answers from all my systems and dumping those answers into an answer bucket, into storage. It's storage that's like S drive, you know, local drive type storage in terms of expense. It's very inexpensive. In fact, it's the least expensive thing in the cloud, I believe, but it's queryable, right? So even though it's sitting there, you can still run T-SQL, you know, Spark, Python queries, R queries against this stuff that's sitting in very inexpensive data, in inexpensive sources. And you can do that on an ad hoc basis, and then eventually, you know, use that to start creating these models. That's what they mean by schema on read or modeling this on the fly. And so instead of having a pure data warehouse where you have to understand everything, you can pretty much have data warehouse on the fly off of the stuff that is in your answer bucket that you've ingested from. And then, sure, downstream, one of the great things out of that is to build out whatever you want report-wise. And so that could be Power BI, it could be Excel, but it really could be anything at that point. So your reporter, your report writer, can use his or her favorite tool to access that data, but it's not stuck in that one Excel spreadsheet. It's not stuck in, you know, a click report or something like that. It is liberated from its source system, that transactional system on the left side, and put into this performant area so that it can be queried in massive amounts of data for the purpose of visualizing or, you know, data science and so on. And eventually your downstream customers are just served up much faster. And it allows us to respond in a more systematic way to those requests. Because I'm sure, I mean, like I said, I haven't been in the trenches for a while, but I'm sure those requests for data access, you know, report systems and so on, just continue to build up from those business units. And this provides you that place that allows, you know, for a very secure, governed way to extract, you know, build whatever they are asking for, but it's not a one-off, it's not bespoke. It allows it to build into this kind of mind share, this data share of data that then your multiple customers can benefit from. So look, that piece of analytics and insight, we could probably spend a whole nother hour just diving into the use cases, the how, and the why. I hope I've done a good enough job of just summarizing those, because that's, for our time today, I wanted to cover kind of the gamut of it. Please know that, whether it's us, your government, your Microsoft government rep, or really just our websites and everything else, our cloud, it should enable you to do at least give you that thoughts, so you can start exploring this wherever you are in the journey, whether it's the foundational stuff or maybe you're more advanced. So you might be able to start taking advantage of the data science side of things, which, if you're not aware, like, this is where I believe it starts, kind of enabling us to be disruptive in terms of, using the data to responsibly and ethically, provide those government services in a more effective manner. What I mean by that is that, as I shift gears a little bit to the AI and ML side, I'm thinking of those, 30-year veterans of the field in our human services department or our law enforcement divisions, who know, right? They can take a look at any one use case or situation and assess very quickly that the appropriate steps to take. And where did that come from? It came from the training of years and years of experience and information and just, know-how to get there. But what happens when we've got turnover, right? We've got this, what I call the silver tsunami of retirement, out of government. How do we inform that next, the rookie caseworker in human services? How do we get that individual, that caseworker, in a spot where they can perform even remotely close to what that veteran was at? And so that's where we start thinking about the machine learning, is that, yes, all that training that went into this use case, right? This situation, knocking on a door of a foster care situation, being able to assess real quickly the data there, and then make a decision on whether or not to pull the child. I mean, that's very sensitive information. And so I want to make sure that when we start using or leveraging computers to inform us of this, that we're doing this in an ethical, responsible way, that it's informing us. It's not making the decision for us. I'm not proposing some sort of a Cyberdyne Terminator situation, right? I'm proposing that we do this in a very ethical way, where we can take the knowledge, train a machine so that it can be almost as good as a human when it comes to making decision based off of multiple sets of points of data, and start informing via a case management app. It's like, hey, this is an exception. We feel that there's a 90% chance that there's some sort of intercession that needs to occur when you walk into this situation, right? That's all we're talking about here, is being able to use all that data and scale that out, so that we're not relying on that poor caseworker that just wants to retire to inform on every situation. So it enables that quality of service that will empower the residents and help us adhere to the laws and policy that we're setting at the legislative level to do so. So anyway, look, there's statistics about, why AI and machine learning is very important. It's not just a thing that Michael dreamt up here. It's something that centrally speaking, like folks and customers federally and beyond, right, are doing. I feel like they're doing this in a sort of a desktop ad hoc manner. It's not always as in a sustainable way that I've been describing, but I'm seeing more and more as people get through the foundational pieces of bringing that data together in a data engineering manner, getting done with chores with the data, that they can then again turn their attention to more sustainable ways to do AI and machine learning. And so, if you've got customers, departments within your base that are looking for things to think about accelerating a situation, anywhere you've got multiple customers or multiple residents that are calling into a system, think about using AI type solutions to do this. There's pre-built AI that you can turn on to take advantage of, like, some of the models that have already been built out for generic type stuff. And then there's custom stuff that, say a paperless court system is going to be a little bit more of a custom situation for your court system than say, I don't know, one on the East Coast or West Coast or so on. So anyway, what I mean to say there is that, like, use machine learning, inject it into AI components where you can. I use it right here. So I just press this button right here, and you probably have this in your PowerPoint, where as I'm speaking, you can see it's actually sending it off to an AI, machine learned trained bot who is taking what I'm saying and transcribing it off the fly. And I know this isn't as impressive as it was, say, 5 years ago, but this is a service that's sitting in the cloud, in our cloud, and beginning to do this right off the bat or on the fly. And so I love this one because it, as far as accessibility and so on, it helps for folks that can't, are challenged with that, and as well as others that, maybe speak. Let's try this one. Maybe don't speak the language that's being spoken natively. And so then this is not just transcribing it, but translating it on the fly. Again, these are now two AI services in the cloud that are being leveraged to do this on the fly. And so think of these services for, yes, on the fly type things, but also what if you've got a bunch of video that's out there that you can run in batch to come up with the transcripts and spit it out. So it's searchable indexes of legislative sessions in multiple languages. I mean, it's something that we're doing with a couple states already. So it's, I don't want to, when I describe AI and machine learning alongside all these data components, I know it sometimes can be a little pie in the sky, but there's also just ways that we can take advantage of it ASAP, right? So the court system is one of them. I'm going to use my last couple minutes here to actually show off a little bit more of that. So you might have folks within your organization, data science types, that are already doing this, say on our desktop, or some sort of a Linux box, or something like that that is a little bit different than what you might be running on enterprise systems. And so I want to make sure that you're aware of this. This is the Machine Learning Studio that's in your Azure subscription. If you're already a customer of that, it's just a matter of turning this thing on. Sure, it gives us the ability to create automatic ML, feed it a bunch of data and ask it what the best model might be. It also gives us a place to do some drag and drop type machine learning. So it says, okay, data from system A, I would like you to summarize that and then, create an output that, export this data from here to there. I mean, I'm just doing some drag and dropping, but to point this show that at the end of it, you can take trained models, you can train a model, and then you can score a model and eventually have an endpoint that you can publish out there and score data with. Maybe you're not at that point. Maybe you just need a place where you can run R more effectively. And so this is just a compute instance that you can provision out here. What I like about it is that, if you're tired of looking at those requisitions, requests for PCs that have 80 gigabytes of RAM or something like that, right? You can start to just provision that at a very metered rate. And in my case, I even have a quota on my subscription that says, my boss says, okay, you can only deploy up to 96 cores because that's what you're budgeted for. I don't care, he doesn't care how many of them I put up there as long as it fits within my quota. So there's that. And, I don't think I do have some quota for these GPU powered machines, right? 24 cores, and that's nice of them. Gave me that much of the storage. But this is the point. My point is that yes, it runs more expensive, but then as long as it's within the budget that we agree upon, I get some more autonomy to deploy what I need to. And so that's the type of flexibility, right? Sort of that chore stuff that you can start exposing to your customers. And then you can give them the compute power that they're looking for. And, start using R in the cloud instead of just off of some desktop that I'm sure you're probably suffering from the same hardware constraints as we are, right? So let's centralize it. Let's make sure we can create a pool, an elastic pool, so that multiple folks can use it. And that's what these clusters are for. So, hey, I just wanted to quickly show you what's possible in real life for that type of thing in terms of the machine learning. And then I want to wrap us up by making sure that when you look at this, you're also considering the governance of this, whether it's the structured, the semi-structured, or the data that could be anywhere. Make sure you're running some sort of an inventory tool, assessment tool, categorization, compliance tool that it's keeping track of your governance stance. And so we have one called Azure Purview. It's built off of open source Apache Atlas. It's a really good service. Everything I've talked to you about is all in the cloud. No VMs, it's all PaaS, right? Platform as a service. So you don't have to maintain or patch or update or upgrade any of these things, right? We take care of that side of it as a managed provider, service provider, and then you just run that and leverage it and harness it. And of course, in our case, it sits on top of the applications and Office and productivity tools and other business applications and has a Dataverse underneath it. So This is a quick tour. Like I said, Ron, we could probably go for hours on these topics, but I wanted to just, lay out the idea of, doing data culture alongside the data security topics that we talked about earlier with Rosa, Shiva, and Steve, and then, once we get, as we're getting that done, we're also extracting insights out of the data, and start to build the data culture, leveraging these services and everything else. So it's a fun time to be in this space, and I congratulate you for, you said the skills, start to expand those skills. Like if you're a DBA, if you're an analyst, if you're a report writer, there's absolutely a place for you to work and extend your existing skills, not have to forklift them, but build off of what you already know into systems that really impact our communities. So I've got more information, more demo, but Ron, that's pretty much what I got today.
Well, that was a great highlight. We even had people, and I'll make some follow-up comments. Maybe you could talk about this as well. Ahmed had questions about a paperless court system and how Microsoft is facilitating that. And I think it's not only court systems, how does everything go digital with digital records? Maybe you could speak on that, which is a great general topic, before I make some concluding comments.
Yeah, well, the paperless court system is a matter of, I can show the quick slide of this. It's the architecture for that is to bring in all the different systems, ingest it, and then apply what's called virtual court data intelligence. I mean, it was born out of the remote work, right? When we shut down, court still needed to occur, right? And so the idea was, well, if we have to go to the cloud anyway, can we make it more effective along the way? So I'll just share this. Share screen, share that. Okay, so this is what it looks like. Is the similar concept about taking the. Yeah, of course you would do that, Michael. There we go. Ingesting that data from the data silos, it's storing in the answer bucket, and then applying the data analytics and visualization layer for the decision making. But alongside that, there was also this idea of taking the on-premises data with the real-time data, creating more data from unstructured court data, and then creating this idea of having applications for those judges, the bench, the paralegals, everybody else that is basically run through all that data that would normally take a lot of folks on premises to sort and bring together. So I know that was a very haphazard way to describe it. I could probably follow up with the question asker with the folks that built the solution, because there is actually a turnkey solution to make this happen.